Well, this is Friday morning, and it's time to join Pat McArt in the glory and beauty that is known as Donegal. How are you this morning, Pat?
Grand, Jude.
I said Donegal was beautiful and glorious, not you now.
Not Jude. I knew you were referring to me, but no, it's fine, Jude. It's as now on our weekly or the twice weekly. Is that bi-weekly, by the way?
I never know. I can never make
I
up
never
my
knew
mind.
whether
I'm too
twice a
ignorant.
week is it bi-weekly or is it once every 2 weeks? By the way, it's let me fill you in on the weather. It's dark and it's dull and it's grey.
Does that affect your mood, Pat? Do you feel?
Some days, Jude, I'm what do you call them people? Not sad. I'm all right for a wee while, but I should see about mid-December. Hey, geez, I want all I want to do is see is a bit of light and a bit of sun. Years back, when we retired first, usually sometime around about the end of November. Ryanair was very good. You could get a couple of flights for about. In fact, a couple of occasions we got flights to Spain cheaper than you can go to Dublin on the bus. So you know.
Oh, for God's sake! But you don't get you must be able to go to Dublin on the bus for nothing now.
I know, yeah. I've got the free pass now. I am 68 years of age, Dr. Collins.
I know the feeling.
You get it.
It's kind of bittersweet, isn't it? You regret the fact that you're so old, and yet at the same time, it's great having the thing for nothing.
I've only used it. I think, Jude, I got it when I was 65. I think I've only used it once.
Geez, we use ours all the time. Anytime we go down to Dublin, we go down in the train,
Yeah.
And then the bus or the train.
I think I've only used it once. Yeah.
It's one of the good things Charlie Haughey did. He did a couple of other good things too, and I think he's people are too. I don't know what I'd say. They're too focused on the bad things he did to miss the good things that he did.
Anyway, very kind there, Doctor.
I know.
Remember the old Shakespeare one? He did the state some service.
That's what he said when he was going. Enough of that. He said, "I've done the state some service." Well, he did too. But he had a bit of class, He had class.
But they reparsed. He did the state. Full stop. Some service.
The importance of punctuation,
Importance of punctuation.
Well, we can go back to him again. I think he's good. Okay, let's move to saving the world, which is what Micheál Martin was busy doing out in Glasgow. And what the various papers are saying about it. The Irish Times has a headline: households and private sector to bear most of climate action plan cost. So there's 125 billion euros going to be set into 475 actions to have greenhouse emissions by 2030. But most of those are going to be by private individuals, private companies, I suppose, or ordinary people like ourselves, right?
Yeah, Jude,
what do you think of that? Is that the way it should do?
I think that's the way it's going to work as far as I can figure it. Jude, basically, there was a guy who came to our house years ago. Now, our house was built in the 70s, and he looked at this, looked at that, looked at the other thing. And by the time he was finished, if we put in solar panels, put in, all the different things, I think we were talking somewhere between 40 and 50,000. Now, Jude, if you're going to set out to retrofit houses nowadays, like, I don't think Mrs. Doherty, who's retired and on a pension, whatever, and her husband, who's, where are they going to get 40? And by the way, Jude, that's some years back. I'd say it's doubled in price now. So all this retrofitting, I don't see how it's all going to work. So they're talking about offshore wind power. By the way, I think you said there, wasn't it 475 actions that have been sanctioned? No. So what are they going to retrofitting houses, wind power? They're talking about, Jude, the other thing, your favorite subject, putting a million electric cars on the road by 2030. Now, Jude, that is good for a laugh. Like, there isn't even a set. Right, Jude, remember you talked, I think you used the term range anxiety. You try finding, I live here in North Inishowen, or South Inishowen, and if you went to Letterkenny, which is 20 miles away, if you can find an electric charging station between here and there, good for you, because I don't have a clue where one is, and I've looked. So, right, Jude, the infrastructure isn't there. So a lot of those things, Jude, as far as I can see, are bullshit. They're aspirational. No, they're very worthy, and I'm all in favor of them. But, Jude, 475 actions. 29, putting out of the electric cars, the changing over, Jude, it will demand a serious change in lifestyle for everybody. And by the way, the government, most of all.
Yeah, well, I think people would be willing to change their lifestyle, but I don't think they'd be willing to dip into their pocket and when they're struggling and then fork out more money. As you say, like retrofitting doesn't come cheap. And while you might very much want it, and you could see the advantages of it for yourself once it was in, and for the planet once it was in, it'd be a different matter in terms of saying, well, the government will give you, 20 euro or 40 euro or 100 euro, and you handle the rest. You may as well come out clean and say, we're not going to do it. We're not going to do it. It's not going to happen.
Well, Jude, if you have to put on, say, double glazed windows, say in an average size house, much that's going to cost probably 20 grand. If you have 10, 15 windows.
No, but it wouldn't be that much. No, we got double glazing. I can't remember, man. It's a good while ago, but it definitely wasn't 20 grand.
Right. And say you have to put in solar panels. All that. Well, I remember we got double glazing some years ago, and by God, Jude, it wasn't cheap. That much I do remember now. Maybe in fairness, we got 2 doors put on as well, double doors. So at the same time, but Jude, it certainly wasn't cheap. And then if you put on solar panels, you have to get somebody to take out your roof, put on the solar panel, and all the retrofitting, Jude, that you'd have to do would be seriously expensive. Now it's very worthwhile and so on. But as we Greta Thunberg said the last day, a lot of it was blah blah blah. Like Jude, China and Russia don't seem to have bought into a lot of it. They're making all the right sounds, but China are going ahead with opening up coal mines. So,
Yeah. Well, again, I'd be wary of that. I think there's a danger in saying, China and America, for that matter, and other places aren't really in on this. So why should we bother? I think we've got to sort of say, well, we'll do whatever we can do ourselves.
Yeah, I agree.
But at the same time, it's a fact that same applies to us as well. You don't change your way of living, except you've got a very strong reason to do it, especially if it's going to cost you. And as you take the example of electric car things, of which I have some knowledge, if they have no chargers, people won't buy them. No, and if they buy them, they'll be like me and they'll regret it. So you have to put those in. And he hasn't made any real assurance to people. Listen, mate, you'll be able to get to a charging point every 20 miles, no matter where you are in the country or the state. He hasn't mentioned that. Again, it's you could say I'm taking the Shinner line, but Mary Lou McDonald says, well, it was high on rhetoric and low on specifics. And I think that probably sums it up, really. Which is terribly regrettable because his speech at the COP20 or 26 was quite good. He sounded like, he had a few good lines and was impressive, and he looked good too. But I'd be a bit worried. The Irish Examiner, incidentally, on the same topic, says that action is needed to stop billionaires from plundering the planet, according to Oxfam. They say that the new report shows that there's people who have to constrain luxury carbon consumption, like mega yachts, private jets, space travel.
Aye.
Hello, Jeff.
Jeff Bezos.
Hello, Jeff.
And our friend Virgin Airlines boss Richard Branson. These boys are going after space and space travel. Jude, I was reading a wee bit last night, nothing to do with this. Know your man, what do you call him, Bloomberg? And he apparently he's at the COP26 and he's telling people they need to change. He owns, as far as I know, 6 planes, 3 helicopters. They reckon he has somewhere about 12 to 14 houses, and he has an excess of 40 cars. Now, you talk about a carbon footprint and all that, and about luxurious consumption or luxury consumption. Jude, there's like the other question too, Jude, how many private planes landed in Glasgow for this conference?
There was a guy on Channel 4 News reporting, and he was standing out in the street, and he said, here comes the President of the United States, and he commented on how many vast cars or automobiles went past and how much that must have been contributing to global warming itself. Leave aside, the Scotsman does a report on this, and they say that what did they say? Yeah, Jamie Livingston, the head of Oxfam Scotland, had out as new research showed that by the end of this decade, the carbon footprints of the richest 1% of people on Earth are set to be 30 times greater than what's compatible with keeping global warming below 1.5. You know, with the yachts and the private jets and the space travel and all the rest of it. Again, I think there's a temptation to say, well, those buggers are not doing what they should do, so why should I be bothering myself? I think you have to do the best you can, all of us, in some ways, you know.
Yeah.
And even if it costs us a bit, but the government should be giving a lead in this. They really should. What they should be doing, I think, they should take a town and they should make that a model of what it would look like, put the money in themselves. Yeah. Give people grants to do these things, full money or 3/4. Yeah. And then show people what that town would look like. And say, you could do that inside a year even, and show them what it would look like if a town was green. And I think that would give people some hope that the thing could actually happen. But instead of that, the government just says vaguely like, oh, we're going to do this, going to do that, going to do the other thing. Mind you, it'll be private people, it'll be individual households will have to do it. That's bad strategy.
But you know, if the what do you call it? If the carbon footprint of the richest 1% is probably 30 times that of me and you, at least 30 times. You know, the average Joe. You know, you sort of go, Jesus, wait a minute. You know, it's like those don't do as I do, but do as I say. You know, dude, there has to be some sort of accountable. And I'm not going on a moral crusade here. I'm just saying, Jesus, there has to be the governments have to lead by example. You know, and when you see Joe Biden coming to a conference about climate change and has his main car is known as the Beast. It weighs something like 3.5 tons or something like that. I can't remember what it is, or maybe it's 13.5 tons.
They're really.
But it basically does something like 7 miles to the gallon. You know, it's that heavy. You know, and then he's coming to talking about and Jude, apparently there wasn't enough space at Glasgow Airport for all the private jets that landed. Now, you know, you sort of go, wait a minute, you people are supposed to be. Now, I don't expect them to arrive by bicycle, but there has to be some sort of example set.
I agree completely, Erpan. I think it's very much a disincentive for people to do their bit whenever they see the rich and the great not doing their bit. But maybe it's up to governments to put the pressure on them. I mean, would it be possible for governments to say, look, we don't allow any private jets to land in the south of Ireland, except it's an emergency situation or, you know, certain categories. Couldn't they do that? Would there not be a popular will for that? And that would cut that out. As far as you're concerned, the state I belong to has done their bit as far as curbing private jet and the kind of damage they do. You could do the same thing with cars.
What does they say? You know, we're hitting back at, but what is it? Bojo said that we're 1 minute to midnight and the doomsday clock. And then Prince Charles says we are in the last chance saloon. Everybody accepts this is deadly, deadly serious. But it slips. I do agree with. In fact, there's a friend of mine said he sort of said Greta Thunberg should go back into her room and start going to school again. But I think she was actually right. You know, she says this is blah blah blah. What have they actually done? Jude, see, just using the Republic as an example, a lot of that is absolutely aspirational. There's no. I'm not saying coerciveness, that's the wrong word, but there's nothing to ensure that it actually happens. There are 475 actions planned. But Jude, if tomorrow morning said, I can't afford to put in solar panels, I can't afford double glazing, I can't afford whatever, I know lagging and Kingspan, whatever it is you put on the walls and all that sort of stuff, and say, right, if you want to give me a grant, and so on, I might look at it. But if you think I'm going to spend 40,000 and I'm on a pension at this stage of my life, go take a run to yourself.
I think that's the attitude most people would have, and it really is very regrettable. And as you say, it's deadly, deadly serious. I mean, it's our children, our children's children's future, as we said, that's at stake. When I was a kid, you know the way you were taught the catechism and they talked about the end of the world. I used to sort of be scared, witless, and think what the end of the world would be like. This is what's going to happen, literally. It's going to be the end of the world. in about 100 years' time, 150 years' time, the end of the world if they allow this just to continue.
Well, Jude, if we keep going the way we're going, by 2050, we are in deep shit. Seriously deep shit. There'll be serious repercussions in terms of flooding, fires, even health crisis. The heat will have increased. Other species will have disappeared. The forests will disappear. Our air quality will be. Dude, it doesn't take a genius to work out. We need to do something.
Well, I think, you see, maybe it's, the fault lies in part with the opposition to the governments which aren't doing anything, is that we say, aren't they a crowd of so-and-sos, but we don't offer concrete suggestions. I think Greta Thunberg is, if that's her name, is quite right, blah, blah, blah. But she needs, and the people that she represents they need to come up with solid alternatives. Then people can make some progress.
It's like that whole thing about the vaccination. I am not a scientist and I'm not a doctor. Neither are you. We need the professionals, the experts, the people who, the virologists, the immunologists, to come up with a strategy. The same with the climate change. Now, Jude, you're back into this whole thing. There, David Bellamy, remember, he said that it was natural cycle and all that. No, but the science seems to be suggesting that for every rogue scientist, there's 99 saying, "Look, wait a minute, this is real and it's genuine."
Yeah, it's for real.
Well, I think that day's gone. But anyway, Jude, we're dependent. I don't know enough about carbon emissions. I don't even know how it all works. I don't even know a lot about carbon footprint. Other than sort of, you shouldn't be going on planes and you shouldn't be doing a whole lot of other things. But Jude, we're dependent on the experts and so on. And I think the governments have to come on with more than just aspirational. They have to say, here's what we're going to do. Here's what you're going to have to do. Here's the plan for doing it. Here's the strategy. And I think that's rather than just talk.
Yeah, that's the job of the governments, is to put forward plans, concrete plans. But, if in fact these concrete plans don't amount to a hill of beans or just are blah, 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 then somebody's got to tell them what about it is blah, 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 and insist that they put pressure on them to come up with something that is concrete and is realizable.
Yeah, that's real. Yeah.
The fact of the matter is this: when the COVID struck, right, the government found ways, Britain and America here, they found ways of providing people with money, even though they weren't able to go to work. This famous furlough. So Theresa May used to talk about it. You think there's a magic money tree. There's a magic money tree when you have to have it, when the society is at risk. The same thing more so applies to this. They should be pouring the money into it, absolutely pouring it in until they're absolutely sure it'll work.
Donald Trump and people like that said there wasn't money for infrastructure and all that. But every time America goes to war, they can find trillions.
Oh, yeah. So there is a money there. The question is, how can we get the governments to make sure that they do it? And I think the only answer to that is if we come up with at least some suggestions, concrete suggestions as to what we could do that would remedy gaping holes that the government is leaving. Okay, important thing is not, Pat, I want to warn you against this because I can see it in your eye. Your intention of throwing your hands up and saying, it's all hopeless. Don't throw your hands up, Pat. Summon up your blood and say, we will overcome. Someday.
We will overcome,
Someday.
Someday.
Okay, let's go to what I would be tempted to describe as a pantomime villain. I'm speaking, of course, of one Owen Paterson, parish.
By the way, I saw you had a photograph of him, Dr. Combs.
Yes. I was trying to reason with him even. That was taken about 10 years ago, and I was trying to reason with him even then. I said, listen, Owen, you must change your ways. You really can't go on like this. But did he listen to me? No,
did he?
No. But he has been caught badly. And for the people who've been living in a hole in the ground and don't know about it, he has been doing at least, I think, a couple of jobs of lobbying and being paid over £100,000 for his efforts. And apparently wasn't supposed to do this. It's not allowed. And there was a cross-party group in Parliament, in British Parliament, that said, we're going to suspend you. I must say, I have to laugh at that. We're going to suspend you for 30 days. Whoa, my God, that's going to be really tough. Really tough. Not going to put you in prison for 30 days. We're not going to, throw you right out of your job. We were going to have 30 days. And then Boris Johnson rushes in and says, oh, no, the whole system's natural justice. I keep repeating, natural justice demand that we tighten up the system. It's not fair to own. And don't forget, his wife died. And, and then the next minute, one Paterson says, I'm off. I've had it. He says, I will remain a public servant, but outside the cruel world of politics.
Politics, yes.
But there was a woman called Jennifer Cassidy, and she tweeted on this, and that's the way she started. Did Owen Paterson really just quit by saying, I will remain a public servant, but outside the cruel world of politics? Excuse me, but you are this cruel world of politics. You took the bribe. You engaged in corruption. You did wrong. This is on you. Own it. So, how's that for telling them?
There's something seriously wrong in Britain right now. The respect for convention, standards, laws, morality has gone totally. Jude, Cassie Quartang, or whatever you call him, the business secretary, said Catherine Stone, the commissioner, should look to her position. In other words, he was basically saying the woman who said there was an egregious abuse of the system was actually the person who should fall on her sword, not the guy who actually was the egregious user of the system. Jude, he was representing two basically Northern Ireland firms as far as Randox and London Country Foods, I think. Like, apparently you're quite entitled to advise him, but what he went further, he wrote to various ministers lobbying on House of Commons paper on behalf of him. Now, in other words, he was their lobbyist, paid lobbyist. He's getting his full salary, and his personal interests conflicted with his public interests. In other words, he was advising these, but he was then using his position as an MP to get into various government departments using House of Commons note paper and stuff like that. So he was basically representing his private work. Now, if everybody did that, what happens to all the companies who don't have MPs on their board, who don't? In other words, the two companies, do they jump to the head of the queue, and the other ones who are maybe providing a better service, who maybe have a better product, don't?
I wonder, is it? I'm trying to just figure this out now. If I'm an MP, and in my constituency there's a couple of businesses that are given employment, am I allowed to? What am I allowed to do for them?
But I think the line is, Jude, you're allowed to promote them and you're allowed to sort of do it. But
how do you mean promote now, my
Pat? Tomorrow morning, if I'm the MP and there's a chicken factory down there, I can go to Dublin and sort of say, look, guys, come on, start buying the stuff from all. But Jude, see, when I'm getting paid by them and so on, and I exclusively look after them, not maybe there's another chicken factory 2 or 3 miles down the road. It's when you start a crossover. Like he advised, and he was getting 110,000 a year from.
So is it the money, Pat? Is it the?
It's the money, yeah. That's the money.
If the money wasn't paid, that'd be quite legitimate.
Quite legitimate, because it's not vested interest. He's got a vested interest when he's getting paid by these companies. If he was representing equally all companies in his constituency, there would be no issue.
Well, you wouldn't be able to. I mean, let's say if you've got a constituency, there must be hundreds of businesses in it in a normal constituency. So if you're, lobbying or urging that the government include a couple of businesses, you can't do it for them all. You've got to select some.
Yeah, well, you see, John Hume, when he was MP, Hume got Seagate into Derry, and he promoted that company right, left, but he wasn't getting anything out of it. It was for the good of the community, and
Fruit of the Loom,
and Fruit of the Loom, yeah. And that provided work for 3,000 people for about now. It ended in tears.
But and that Back to the Future car business that he set up.
DeLorean. But Jude, that was you see, like you're back to that sort of Charlie Haughey thing. Like that was a terrible error. But hey, Jude, at that stage, the old joke was the first prize is a week in Belfast, the second prize is 2 weeks in Belfast. That DeLorean was the same. Nobody would take DeLorean, but Northern Ireland was so desperate because the troubles were in full swing. There was no investment, and jobs at West Belfast, Jesus, was like manna from heaven. And even if they knew he was a crook, they were still going to take him.
And they poured money into it themselves. The government
80 million at a time when money was money.
But here, listen, what do you think, Pat, of the way that Owen Paterson dealt with his the role of his wife and her death, her suicide, and the way he linked it to these charges of corruption?
Jude, you know, someone I'm loath because of his personal opinion, but Jude, I thought it was a wee bit grubby. I really genuinely did. I'd like. He said a couple of the Sharpshire Evening Echo or something, that he didn't understand why his wife had committed suicide. He had no idea and all that. And then suddenly, after he's in trouble, he says that this whole scandal was what was really motivating her and all the rest of it. It's almost as if he's using his wife's suicide for personal sympathy.
And it's not, you're wrong there, Pat. It's not almost. He did use his wife's suicide to protect himself, which is sort of disgusting, to be honest with you. I mean, I know the man. I mean, if he loved his wife, he must have felt terrible pain or suicide. But at the same time, he used it. He used it. Of course, people here in the north of Ireland have been using dead people for a long time to stand up and preach. The number of coffins that have been stood on by public representatives and used shamelessly is something pretty awful, pretty awful. So we really maybe haven't got room for throwing stones at Owen Paterson.
By the way, I'll switch this on you, Jude. Why do you think Boris Johnson, like he come gung-ho, told his MPs to vote against this whole system, and that he was going to protect Owen Paterson, and that Catherine Stone would have to look at her position and so on? What do you think? How did it change, and why did it change so quickly?
Because I'd say the guys who were, he realized that the people he had whipped through, that's the Conservatives that went through the lobby to vote for his new plan of protection. They did it with such grumbling and mumbling and objections that he realized this is not going to work. You know, I'm going to have resentment from a fair-sized chunk of my own political party. And the public are going to say, holy God, this is a prime case of these guys looking after their own and protecting somebody who clearly has done something wrong. So he realized internally and externally it wasn't going to fly. And he hastily did a U-turn. But the thing is this, he's going to get away with it. You know, absolutely. In a year's time, nobody will remember a thing about the famous U-turn he took, although he's taken a U-turn after U-turn. But anyway, old Paterson's talked about leaving the cruel world of politics. And I was trying to track it down. My wife said it was on Twitter that Alistair Campbell had tweeted a list of things that Paterson had voted for or against, which really were cruel to those who had no money, which made life very difficult for people. So he said if there's cruelty, he certainly contributed his share when he was in politics.
No, Judy, you know, there's the big picture, and I'm not going to go on because we've discussed it. But hey, you got to ask yourself the question: like, does morality or any kind of, you know, and Boris Johnson's, like he was going to throw the commissioner to the wolves on top. By the way, I think one of the big things, Judy, I think happened. The Daily Mail's front page on Thursday morning. See, when the Daily Mail turns out, like that, I think what happened is that crossed a red line even for the Daily Mail. You know, they were going to throw out the standards and the ethics all out just to save a Tory MP. You know, in other words, there was no such thing as there's no red line that they won't cross, but they come out with a massive headline. This is disgusting and it's disgraceful and so on. And I'd say when they, in the early morning, about 7 o'clock or 6 o'clock, when they got the Daily Mail, they sort of saying, oh, geez, the tide has turned against us big time. And then I know Lord Fauntleroy, Jacob Rees-Mogg was sent in to sort of say, look, we've changed our mind and we're going to have another vote.
Yeah. The whole thing about lobbying worries me, you know. I remember talking to a woman who was a lobbyist. She was a really nice, charming woman too. It was an interview I did with her. And I was saying, you know, is this not a bit unfair? I mean, you're going in there and you're whispering into MPs' ears and urging them to do such and such a thing. But the people who don't want that to happen, they maybe don't have the resources to go and hire you. And her reply was a disarming smile and a girl has to make a living, she said.
Yeah. Judge, you look at the American system. people like, what do you call the guy who's the main guy in the Republicans? He's worth about. He started off as a young politician, as nearly in poverty. He's now worth 40 or 50 million because lobbyists are paying him. Paul Ryan was the Speaker of the House. He came in as a very young man and he left with 12 million in the bank. Now, the salary of a politician in America is somewhere like about 200,000 a year. Like you don't have 10 million, 12 million in the bank after 10 years on 200,000 a year, particularly when you have to live, you have to raise a family and all the rest of it.
Okay, answer me this, Pat. Would you ban lobbying?
Aye, yeah.
Would you?
Because it's a thin end of the wedge. It is basically immoral. As you said, you're just using your own argument against it. There are certain people, the big firms. There's a very simple here. I'll just throw this at you. I read it about 3 weeks ago. Apparently, there was a product given to women who were pregnant in America by one of the big pharma companies. And the bottom line is, a lot of these women lost their children, lost the pregnancy. And there was a class action being taken against it. I've just read this. Apparently, the company set up a dummy company in Texas, and it was declared bankrupt, and therefore, the company that just all responsibility was evaded. And the guy said this goes to prove that corporation write our laws, because they were able to lobby to set up a dummy company, transfer all assets over to the dummy company over in Texas, and then suddenly walk away. So there's someone like 300 women in America who have lost their children, will never get compensation and will never be able to do anything about it. Jude, that is pretty disgusting. That's lobbying at its finest.
I couldn't agree with you more. And as you were talking, Pat, it struck me, you being a journalist man yourself, the only people who can really begin to do something about this are the media. As you said, like when the Daily Mail came out with a headline that was essentially attacking what Boris was proposing to do, Boris backed down. So the media have a big, important role in this. And again, I guess the fact that we have social media, we also, in a way, have something to contribute. I suppose if enough people shout loud enough. I remember Francie Brawley saying this to me one time. What he was talking about actually was, well, I'll say it. He was talking about Sinn Féin's decision to go with, what amounts to abortion in limited circumstances. Yeah. And I said, but they've made that decision already. And he said, well, they'll remake it if enough people don't want them to make it. Yeah. Which is absolutely true. Now, as it happened, it didn't work that way for that case. And God be good to Francie Brawley, he's dead now, but I always thought he was a nice man. But his point was a valid one. If the politicians, no matter what political party they belong to, if the public can find a way of really expressing their anger or their outrage with it, they will back down. They will back down, and Boris has just done it in that instance. I guess the media are very important as well, probably maybe more important than individuals, but we all have some part to play. And the fact we have social media, you're a social mediaist yourself. Yeah, you should be in there throwing in stuff and saying, bloody well, stop lobbying, and Owen Paterson.
I'm a journalist, and I suppose social media, during the day I'm involved in all other things, but at night, because I'm not, see some of the crap that's on TV, some nights I sit down and, Jude, I'm up to about 700 in Wordscape. This sort of, it's like a crossword. I'm sitting at night, and then I'm bored, so I start doing something else. And then I read a book for a wee while, and then I start going on social media. But Jude, it's amazing. Jude, I'm not going down the same, but you sort of despair over the world when you see some of the people who still think Bojo is a great leader, and you see the support he gets from some of the people on social media, the people who think Trump is, a God-fearing, pro-life, Bible-reading person. And I'm thinking, if you can buy that, Jude, there's no wonder, if you elect an idiot, what does that tell you about the electorate?
Well, that's true. That's true. Well, of course, the thing the two people you've mentioned have is personality. They've got personality. They have a personality. Whether you like it or not, Trump has got personality, Boris has personality. And that's in a great measure why they're so bulletproof as they are. That's what I think.
Jude, hey, go on. That I don't buy it. Jude, see, if you take 5 minutes you can see they're hypocrites, they're
Well, you
liars,
can see
they're
it, Pat, but
cheats.
a lot of people are so they love so much a bit of color and dash in their lives. That's why the monarchy is there. They think, oh God, isn't it great? Look at the way they go to that palace, and then like
But
Jude
here,
said
Jude,
this.
here's a question I've always asked. See if you were in a foxhole in the middle of a war, and you know the guy beside you was a liar, a cheat, a charlatan, a totally lacking and a coward and all the rest. Would you regard him as somebody you want to be a leader, or would you want the guy who tells the truth, who's got your back, you know you can trust in a fair fight, you know? And yet everybody knows Bojo and Trump are not those type of people, and yet sometimes you know. Jimmy Carter, who is probably the most honourable president that has been is derided in the media. Jeremy Corbyn, without question, was probably the most honourable, the politician with the most integrity in Britain in years. Derided. Even Angela Merkel, you know, because of her way of going on, you know, wearing the same suit, was sneered at by a lot of you know, the sort of right wing media. Now, in fairness, she was able to override a lot of that. But you sort of ask yourself, you know, what are our values?
Pat, let me tell you what our values are. I think it's for you and for me and for some people, we judge politicians on what they do and the policies they have and how faithful they are to their word in terms of them. And for example, we're not impressed by Micheál Martin's one this morning. For many people are not particularly interested in politics, but if they're going to have somebody on the screen all the time, they want that person to be good fun, or a guy they could go for a beer with, or have they any jokes, or do they sound really smart, or do they look well? And you know, it's that kind of really superficial stuff. And I've always maintained this, that the way a politician looks is at least as important as how he or she acts. And
what you're saying is Dr. Conte's perception is as important as the reality.
Far more important, because that's where people stop. They just say, well, what does the guy look like? What does she sound like? Is that a nice dress she's wearing? And they don't ask, what's the policies involved? And to tell you the truth, Pat, to some extent, we all do this. To some extent. You know, there are people who we dislike. There are politicians you dislike just simply looking at them. Now, your judgment could be flawed because you maybe don't know their policies. But there's something about them that puts you right off. And there's some politicians that attract you. I used to find Boris Johnson, and I used to enjoy when he came on TV because you could be sure it's going to be a fun interview. But looking at the policies he's pursued now, I'm appalled, and that shrinks into nothingness. But for a lot of people, they don't bother with that thing about the policies.
I hope you're ashamed of yourself.
I am deeply ashamed of myself because I'm a human being. And you're the same. I know a lot of people say you're not a human being, but I always say to them, Pat Beggart is a human being. Okay, final one. Have you got a tankard of the week?
No, I'm waiting on you. Well, I have.
Hold on. Don't give it to me yet. Let's talk about a very rich man, Antonio Conte.
Yes.
Who has been appointed
I said to you that
manager.
Sports manager. Apparently, see, I read somewhere that the contract was worth 15 million, but I read the Daily Mirror online this morning, and it says the contract is worth 20 million a year.
What's 5 million between friends?
Right, Jude. And so he's an 18 months contract. So if he's got 20 million for 1 year and then 10 million for the 6 months, that's 30 million he's going to earn. And apparently he's got if he can turn the team around, well, they won last night 3-2. If he can turn them around, he's got an extension, I presume another 20 million. Dude, remember Bill Shankly? I remember watching, I think the Shankly Fair. It was a brilliant documentary about, it was on there a couple of years back about Shankly, and he one of the things he said to his players before they went out every Saturday, remember, these, like back in the day, people worked on a Saturday until 12 o'clock or 1 o'clock, and then they went to the football match at 3 o'clock. He said, these are the common people. These are the hardworking people. These are our people. And go out, no matter what you do, put on a show for them, give them somebody to talk about. The game was for the common people. Jesus, Jude, well now, what is it? I can't remember who the last day was. Is it Ronaldo's on someone, when you add all these add-ons to his salary, and he's on something like 500,000 a week? Jude, Jesus Christ, eh?
Well, what would you do, Pat? What would you do? Would you pass a law saying that nobody should be given 20 million a year?
Dude, I don't know, but like surely from the point of view, there should be a more equal distribution of the wealth. Like, see the clubs that are struggling and see all the there should be some way of sort of saying capping it. Now, Jude, surely 10 million a year is more than enough for anybody. Jesus, and even that would be ridiculous. But like just say, let's be generous. But Jesus, Jude, like Conte's getting 20 million from Spurs. Now, Jude, I don't know what he earns outside the game, and I presume like he's a good-looking fella. So if he does Gillette razors or whatever, or some sort of Lamborghini cars for some, or whatever it is that he might do in Italy, I'm sure he can bring up another couple of million. Sure, surely if the clubs all got together and said, right, the money we make, there 10 or 15% will be channeled down to clubs in the 3rd and 4th divisions and so on. Now, the Premier League should have some sort of system to encourage growth of the game locally. Instead of that, a lot of clubs in England, the lower leagues, are basically bankrupt.
Yeah, I tend to agree. It should be spread around a bit. But at the same time, like, I can think of jobs other than a football manager where people do stuff that's less worthwhile and get at least as much money. I mean, there's guys who are making, I mean, look at Jeff Bezos shooting his bloody rockets to the moon and all the rest of it. Conte will make Spurs a good team. He will give enormous pleasure to an awful lot of people. The market says this is what you have to pay them. And I look at it from I'll have to stop here because we're running over our time. I look at it from the point of view of the glass half full rather than the glass half empty. I would say that instead of bemoaning the fact that Antonio Conte is earning 20 million, Daniel Levy, who owns Spurs, is having 20 million separated from him to pay Conte. And that gives me a great deal of pleasure, because if there's ever a cheap, tightwad chairman or whatever he is with Spurs, it's Daniel Levy.
There's a sort of a karma. Mauricio Pochettino, like, he was the best manager they ever had, and they wouldn't spend money, they wouldn't back him. He had an agent team he wanted to, and so on, and they sacked him. And look what happened. But hey, Jude, I'll leave you. You're dead right. We're running over. But hey, last week, on 1 week, Elon Musk, the Tesla guy, added 36 billion onto his fortune.
Now, that's obscene. That is obscene. I agree completely with you there. Yeah. And he's not even nice looking.
No. On that note.
Okay, Pat. Thanks very much.